10:30. Every Sunday, 10:30 at the JCC, right down the road. Again?
When's the Zodiac one?
You'll have to come and see. I don't know the date. Yeah, it's going to be a fun class. So it's the one. It's going to be. We're going to study the Jewish Hebrew months and their spiritual representatives of how they represent.
Amazing. Sharon was there this week.
Sharon was there this week.
So they started, but you guys can jump in at
today
any...
was they're individual classes, so they're self-contained, and
but there will be a celebration at the end of the series. Like we'll have a Friday night dinner celebration. It's almost like a bar mitzvah.
Like you want to come to us for Friday night, you got to come to my
yeah, it's a free class. It's totally free. It's for we're doing this in conjunction with the Jewish Family Experience. So their Sunday school is hosted out of the Northbrook JCC, and we're just kind of offering this to their parents and also adding our L'chaim people that you guys could come at any point. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for taking care of the mezuzahs. No worries. Julie, did you press record? Okay, great. We'll get started. Okay, great. Yeah, we do have a box of pens over here. Yeah, you're welcome. So just before we get started, I just want to give a happy birthday wish to Susie over here. She's 36 years old today. So we put out some treats. There's a birthday table in the back, which we don't do every time on Tuesday, but this is just special to like have a little drink and a Danish or a cookie or a little snack and celebrate Susie after the fast. Thank you. And thank you for being my security blanket over here. I'm like, she's like, can I sit in my regular seat? I'm like, don't leave my side. Okay, because it is kind of it's a big portion that we're jumping into, and there's so much. So, and I don't want to be looking in the text the whole time. I want to be talking about the concepts, but Susie is welcome to jump in at any given moment and bring in any relevant source that might connect with what we're talking about. So for those of you that have not been here for the last 2 weeks, right? So Mara, your first time in the last 2 weeks. So we're still overall doing the same larger, I would say, topic of character traits. But for a 5-week period, we're going to be delving into the matriarchs and kind of analyzing who they were and what characters they had, so that we could glean some of the wisdom and the lessons of their lives. So over here, Sue has a big Post-it, and we have already, last week it was Gail that kind of, as I was speaking, she wrote down some words that came to mind. Will you read them? Because these are things that we spoke about. So
confident, good natured.
Okay, good. So I think we're getting there. We're almost at the end of discussing Sarah. We're going to finish that today, and next time we'll go on, and hopefully we'll do a few more in the next 2 weeks. So I want you to really just hear what I'm saying and see what you could pull out, Sue. And if anyone has an idea, a character trait that wasn't written down, please shout it out, okay? Because we're really trying to analyze over here. So just going back to 2 weeks ago, when we took a look at the Eishes Chayil, the song that was written, it's called The Women of Valor. And we looked at that. It's very, I would say, before its time, it was so magnificent to have the woman being upheld on a pedestal and really being honored and respected and singing her praises in a time where that wasn't the case, right? Even like 200 years ago in many countries and in many civilizations, you wouldn't have the woman being upheld as the power. But Judaism celebrates women, and as much as the world might tell us that it's not, and sometimes when we see things at face value, we might feel that maybe it's not equal. So I'm here to say that it's not equal. It's women are held to be superior, and we have such a power to us that, well, first of all, we have it straight from the Torah when God actually tells Sarah, and I'm not sure if we spoke about this last week, we did, that to listen to Sarah's voice, right? Because Sarah's voice has greater intuition than you'll ever have. And Abraham was the greatest of all men. He had prophecy, and yet God is basically reprimanding Abraham and saying, I know you're great, Abraham, but your wife has something more than you could ever understand. Her deep insight and intuition is so great. And that's why actually Sarah's name, we spoke about this last week, changes. It actually changes 3 times in her life, from Yiska, which is the visionary, to Sarai, which is my princess, because she starts off as Abraham's princess, and then it changes to Sarah, which means princess for the world, princess of all the nations. So you see this individual that is born with a power. Visionary means there's like prophecy there. Like she's gonna see things in a huge, magnificent scope, more than the average person. But she's also going from being small and connected to her husband to being a power in her own right. She grows into that. So I'm gonna start by just going back to those words that King Solomon put out when he wrote that song, right? And we actually spoke about the 2 interpretations of who wrote that song, Eshet Chayil. Does anyone remember? So some people say that it was a eulogy that Abraham wrote for his wife Sarah after she passed away, and we're going to talk about her death today. We'll look at that. And some people say that King Solomon wrote it. Okay, and it's brought down in the book of Proverbs, Mishlei, and Susie actually had a very interesting take on it. She said, "How is it possible that Abraham wrote that song as a eulogy to Sarah when, I mean, right?" So it's definitely something, this is something that we see in the Torah, that we call the Torah like a living Torah, like a living guide, an instruction guide for life. And although it was written thousands of years ago, we still, till today, 2022, it's not so easy to hold on to the Torah values in the society that is changing so rapidly around us. So there are very few people amongst the whole Jewish people that are still holding tight to every single one of the Torah's values and mitzvot. It's actually very hard in a society that opposes so much of it, right? So, but we say it's a living Torah, and that's actually when Susie brought that to my attention, and I said, yeah, that's so true. Clearly, there are some seeds there that started with Abraham, because the love that Abraham had for his wife and the way he eulogized his wife, and we'll look at that in the Parsha, was tremendous. I mean, he was in such grief over his wife, and Yitzchak was in such grief over his mother. And then we see how it evolves to King Solomon, who actually wrote it down. Okay, and clearly King Solomon, who was known to be the wisest of all men, had some deep insight when he started off by saying, Eshet Chayil, woman of valor, mi yimtza. Where can we find her? Meaning, it's not so common to find this woman of valor nowadays, or any generation. Where do you find such a woman that has all these traits? It's not so simple or so easy. This is something that we're not born with naturally. This is a life's pursuit of seeking holiness and growth and getting out of your ego, which is something that Sarah had to do again and again and again in her life. She had the hardest life. And yet what we know about Sarah, and we see this when we see that she dies, it says she was 127 years old, right? Which we spoke about 2 weeks ago. Like, she was so beautiful and so pure. Like, when she was 100, she was beautiful like 20. When she was 20, she was as pure as a 7-year-old, like this. And every single day of her life was good. Now, when you look at her life and you see like what she went through, how could you say that's good? And yet she knew deep down that even what seemed to be bad was really for her good. And those struggles and obstacle courses that she had to go through were custom designed to her. And that's beauty, and that's strength. And sometimes when we think about beauty, we think of like outward beauty, right? But it's like, what is beauty, right? I think, well, beauty for sure is in the eye of the beholder, but I also think beauty is the confidence that you have within you. And that could never fade. That never fades at any age, at any stage. When you have a strong inner compass, a moral compass, you know who you are, you know what you're doing, that's beautiful. That's attractive, right? So it's the confidence that she had in her mission. That's why she didn't need to throw herself in front of people. She didn't need to take the limelight. She didn't need any of that. She was so content being in her tent, doing her thing, not out there doing, you know, like in the world, like getting the fanfare. She didn't need that validation. Okay, yeah.
One quick line here.
Yeah, she was very connected to God. Yeah. It was a slap in the face for Abraham, right? Like, I mean, like I'm sure even Abraham struggled with being put down by God and being saying, like, listen to your wife. I mean, like, I'm sure he had some male ego in him, right? So it must have been hard. But when God is talking to you and you have such clarity, it's huge. So I want to ask you guys before we go further, what you would think, what is the picture in your mind of the quintessential Jewish woman? Like just whatever comes to mind, and shout out an answer. Like, what does she look like? What is she doing? What's her character like? What is she busy with? Like, what does she look like? And anything that comes to mind. Yeah, like think Jewish woman. What? Okay, like me Deborah. Dark hair. You have that Jewish look. Okay, interesting. Okay. So mothering, cooking, that's what you said, not me. I can't remember. My kids had cereal for supper last night. Yeah, what else? Strength, okay, beautiful. What else? What? Selfless, okay. Compassionate, okay, that's a very motherly trait. Dedication, clearly, right? Positive clarity, that confidence that we're saying. So a lot of what we've been saying, okay? Now, if I ask you, think of an image of a Jewish woman, like what is she doing? What is like your typical Bubby? What image comes to mind? That's usually what it is. It's usually that image of a woman lighting her Shabbat candles, right? If you have, look at Jewish art, if you Google Jewish art, I've never done this, but I'm assuming Jewish art, yeah, you'll see Magen David is Jewish woman art, right? I mean, Roz, like, okay, you want to tell us afterwards? Roz started painting pictures of women lighting Shabbat candles. I have one hanging in my office that she named it Bela, which is my middle name. I'm like, that's my middle name. She's like, it's yours. I made this for you. I love it. And your whole series is I don't know, it inspired you. Oh, do you want to share quickly? Okay, go.
We had a name too. I came home and being so stimulated by the trip, I wanted to paint something from the trip. And my father just passed away, as you know. I cried the whole of Israel. So I did a project in his honor, not for money, just for loving kindness, emotional. And so I did a lot of these Jewish women with their heads covered and then sun lighting candles. And there've been a whole lot of stories. But the one this past few weeks was this woman contacted me on social media from Vienna, Austria. And she asked if she could use my paint Shoshana, which means rose. And that's my most popular painting.
Wow.
It sold first. It's the pink one with
Yeah.
the flowers.
Gorgeous.
And it was at a synagogue, and they had yeah, that's the video. People have done that. And they used my painting for the painting party. The woman lit the candle. And it was in Austria. Wow. And put it by the candle.
Right.
And it doesn't matter that it doesn't look like the
right.
It's vivid.
Right. It's beautiful. Very powerful. Yeah, and it is full circle because right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So Roz, and like you guys could listen to the podcast that Roz and we have an episode of my podcast where we talk about the inspiration for your work, but I'm curious what inspired you to do the candles and the Jewish women. Was it based on, that's usually, as many of you said, that image is usually the Jewish woman bent over her candlesticks, sometimes crying, sometimes in prayer, right? There's something there, this moment of connection. And what it really is we're connecting all the way back to Sarah the matriarch. That's what it is, whether we know it or not. When we are bent over our candlesticks on a Friday night, literally, Sarah the matriarch is right there next to us, over our shoulder, looking at us like our grandmother would, saying, "I'm proud." Yeah. Yes. Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, the power. Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. Yeah. Jewish women come in different, like we look different, especially nowadays. That when I tell you what is the image of your great grandmother, you think about or your grandmother, you might think about the candles, but the future of the Jewish people is not necessarily the way it was, right? There's a very, very large shift going around the Jewish world, in fact, the whole world, with gender roles right now. And I'll tell you guys something really crazy. It's one of the prophecies for the days before the times of Mashiach, that roles are going to change. And one of the books that I study on a regular basis it's a Kabbalistic book. I don't know, I don't teach it here, but I'm happy to teach a little bit more of it. But it's a Kabbalistic book about the rise of the feminine. And it's written by Sarah Yehudit Schneider, who lives in Jerusalem. It makes my husband very uncomfortable. Meaning it's the Torah that she shares. It's good to be uncomfortable, not in a bad way. I'll share this at our Shabbat table. I will read from it. And he's just like, really? Like, I've never heard those concepts, because it's not, there's definitely, it's a very cutting edge book written by an Orthodox Rebbitzin in Jerusalem that is bringing out, Kabbalistic ideas that talk about the shift in power that's going to happen in the days before Mashiach. So what we're seeing, that image that just shifted from this woman cowering over her candlesticks or praying or crying or, maybe feeling like all she could do was cry, all she could do was pray, to now machine gun in the IDF, captain or a general in the army, which is really what we're seeing now, thank God. There is this shift that's going on. So we do need to respect that. We need to respect the shift and know we don't need to fight this. This is actually okay. This is actually predicted. That it's because, guys, guess what? And this is something that I've taught 3,000 times in my life, and I'll say it again and again. When the Jewish woman left when the Jews left Egypt, our sages tell us that it was in the merit of the women that we were taken out of Egypt. And because we had the faith, we led. The men were like, no, we're staying in Egypt. They weren't interested in, the men were not interested in having children and staying married. They were like, They were like, they gave up. They were depressed. And it was the women that came to the fields. They had these mirrors, these copper mirrors that they would beautify themselves with and go and entice their husbands and keep on having children. They wouldn't submit to the slave mentality. They had faith throughout the hardest of times. I mean, we have stories throughout all the generations of the women that really kept their families going, kept it together, and kept the Judaism going. And that's why Judaism really flows through the woman, right? Like a Jewish woman gives birth to a Jewish child. And that's that's how it was always known to be. Other things come from the men, the type of Jew, right? Moroccan, Sephardic, whatever, like Ashkenazi, that's through the man. There's lots of things that come through the man, but the woman gives birth to the Jewish people. So that quote, that it was in the merit of the righteous woman that we were redeemed from Egypt, ... tells us that the future redemption of that we're still waiting for, because we are in exile. I know we have a comfy life here in Deerfield, but this is not it, guys. Like, we are in exile. The future redemption that we're still waiting for will only come about through the strength and power of the Jewish woman. This is like, mic drop. Like, we should all be shaking right now, because it's going to be you, and it's going to be you, and it's going to be you and your daughter. And, it's going to be us that are going to be the ones to usher in better times, not only for the Jewish world, but for the entire world. For the entire world. Someone just asked me, could I bring my non-Jewish friends to this class? I said, of course you could. Part of our mission, not the L'chaim mission, but our Jewish mission is to be a light unto the nations. We don't proselytize. We don't go out and say, oh, everyone become Jewish. No, we even say, do you really want to become Jewish? Like, we're supposed to turn people away 3 times. It's not so easy. And Passover and everything. It's not easy. The Holocaust. We've been tortured and tormented for our entire history. People want to step into that, but when people keep coming back 3 times and say, yes, I want to be a part of this, we say, okay, come on board. I have to tell you something really interesting that I learned. I shared it with Susie yesterday. This is like so exciting. It's so exciting when you've been studying Torah for so many years and then you learn a deeper level. So all the years that Abraham and Sarah were barren, and it was many years of their lives that they couldn't have children, what was happening was that on a spiritual level, because as I said last week, there is face value, there is hints, there is deeper, and then there is mystical teachings. There's like 4 levels of understanding. So on a deeper level of understanding, I learned yesterday that Sarah and Abraham, every single time they were intimate with each other, they gave birth to a soul of a convert. They gave birth to all the converts that will come to the Jewish people. I literally had shivers thinking about this. Exactly. So isn't that beautiful? So beautiful. I was literally shaking, because imagine, and she knew, and maybe that's what kept her going. She wasn't like, oh, what is my life worth living? Yes, I will repeat it. She wasn't down saying, oh, what a waste. Like, she wanted to have this child, like a physical child. But in the meantime, she was giving birth to the spiritual children that were going to come to the Jewish people at different times throughout history. And so what Paula said is that when someone becomes a Jew by choice, and if you guys know this about me, that many of my very close friends are Jews by choice. Like my closest friend in Portland is a Japanese Jew by choice. For some of, right? I mean, from all over the place. Like, another one is from Hawaii, a Jew by choice. And my mother's best friend is Italian, Jew by choice. And these are lights in the Jewish world. Lights. They bring something else, like Elisa Bulow. They bring this, like how we say Abraham HaIvri, like Ivri, from the other side. Elisa calls herself an other sider. She is able to see things that we don't see because she's coming from the other side. So what Paula said was, when someone becomes a Jew by choice, they take on the name. Like, let's say their name is Elisa. Let's say they choose the name at their conversion to become Elisa. Their name is now Elisa, the daughter of Sarah. They don't have, they're no longer, they have disconnected. I mean, obviously you stay connected to your family of origin, but in a spiritual sense, you are taking on a new identity. A true conversion is a transformation of your soul. You now become the daughter of Sarah, and for a man, you become the son of Abraham. And it's so powerful and so beautiful. So I love that. I love that teaching. It wasn't like they weren't wasting time. They were literally giving birth to the future Jews that would enhance our world in such tremendous ways. And for those of you that learned this with me months ago, when we did speak about Jews by choice around the time of Shavuot, when we learned about Ruth, one of my favorite stories, which I'm going to share again because I love it so much, is that when God came to the Jewish people or his angels and said, would you like our Torah? Would you like our Torah? This is when we were standing around Mount Sinai, getting ready to receive the Torah. So God and his angels went to every single nation of the world and said, would you like our Torah? And they all chose not to accept it, except for the Jewish people that, we said, is it free? We'll take two. And we got the 2 tablets. That's the joke, right? So yeah, it's kind of a cute joke. But in all seriousness, the Jewish people said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we'll do and we'll hear. Like we'll take it. We don't even know what we're getting ourselves into. We were so smitten. We were so in. That was in our DNA. We were like, we're changers. We're at the front of every ism. We're change makers, the Jewish people at our essence. So we were like, we're in. We want to change the world. We want to light it up. And every single nation, other than the Jewish people, that said, sorry, it's not going to work out for us. You can't this, you can't that. I don't know. Like, that's a big part of who we are. In every nation, there were individuals that said, I want this. They were outnumbered by their nation. And those are the souls that come back and become Jews at different points throughout history. All those souls stood around Mount Sinai on the outskirts saying, I want in. But they couldn't accept it. They were outnumbered by their nation. So it takes time. And that's why we have Jewish people from every single nationality. In fact, there are so many Muslim Jews by choice at this point. One of them is, the rapper that came here, Nissan Black. He was born Muslim, and he went through such a journey until he found his God, right? And everyone, each one of them has their own incredible stories. So that was something that was like, blew me away. Abraham and Sarah were very busy. They were very busy. Okay. So this quintessential Jewish woman, I'm going to ask for like no questions for a minute or two, because I want to jump into the topic at hand. Okay. I want to ask one more question. What is not the picture of a Jewish woman that you have in your mind? Okay, we painted a beautiful picture of character and beauty and outer beauty and inner beauty and confidence and all that stuff. Beautiful. We all get it. Of strength and like the soldier and the woman lighting the candles and whatever it is. Yes, it's all of that. In fact, when 2 weeks ago, when I gave out that little card, right, for whoever was here, and if you didn't get it, I can still get it to you, or that really sums it up. That is like every type of Jew, whether you're waiting, whether you're mothering, whether you're in pain, whether you're broken, but whatever it is, like all those things, divorced, widowed, all of them, everything. That is the Jewish woman. I love that quote because there's space for everyone to come. You want me to read it? Well, I want to get into the new material. So, but thank you. But for Mara, I want to maybe pass it to Mara so she can read it. So I want to just ask, what is not the Jewish woman traits, looks, this, that? What is not? So no. So meaning you're saying weakness?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So weakness is not a Jewish trait. Okay. A Jewish woman trait. Okay. Selfish. These are all the negative character traits that we've been learning all year. Selfish, angry. What else did we spoken about? Arrogant, like all those things. Yes. And there's so many teachings how those are not Jewish traits. Like a Jew has to be kind, a Jew has to be compassionate, a Jew has to want to create change, fix the world. So yes, what else? Not who? I don't know what that is. Oh, okay. Well, okay. Well, you know what? Interesting. Okay. So modesty, she's saying a Jewish woman has a modesty about her, not the opposite. Okay. So Paul is bringing out like an outer, like a manifestation of her modesty, of her humility. By the way, Sarah was the paradigm for modesty. Okay. So she's saying anything opposite that, it's like lacking of a Jewish feel. Okay. Okay. Nice. So that's kind of like a weakness, right? Like to always like be the victim, and right. So these women were like, they did what they needed to do. Like they were just like, move out of my way. I have to make something happen. It's going to be the hardest thing. We're going to talk about, the next woman who has to, steal the blessing from one of her sons and give it to the others. I mean, they had to do hard things, but it's almost like they had a vision that was greater than their own emotional needs. It wasn't about them. Okay, so I like that. They didn't go into victimhood. They didn't go into like pity, self-pity. They didn't have time for that. Okay, good. Anything else? Okay, good. So okay, beautiful. So I think we have a good picture. Now I want to teach you guys a very powerful quote that is brought down. It's in Bamidbar. So remember we read about this yesterday. If you want to open to Bamidbar Chaf Daled Hey. So it's not Parshas Bamidbar. It's Sefer Bamidbar. I think it was Parshas Balaam. Okay. So this, I'm just going to give the context to this part of the Torah. We're skipping. We're jumping to a different part of the Torah where we have two enemies of the Jewish people, Balak and Bilam. If you're familiar with them, these two characters that want to take down the Jewish people. They want to destroy us at our core. And they're talking about it. And basically one says to the other, okay, this is them trying to destroy us. Like you would think they would say something really bad about us, but instead, these are the words that come out of his mouth. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Some of you might recognize it. We say it in our prayers. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. It's one of our prayers that we say every day. Ma tovu, how great are your tents, Jacob? Mishkenotecha Yisrael. What is Mishkenotecha? It's like your mishkan, your dwellings of Israel. Okay, and it's kind of like, what's going on here? They're trying to tear us down, and all of a sudden, here they go praising the Jewish people and praising the tent of Israel. So what's going on over here? Ohalecha Yaakov. Okay, the tents of Jacob. Okay, it's and the Mishkanot of Israel. Okay, so whenever it says Yaakov, like do you know? Remember, I've for sure spoken about Sarah Schneerer, who was the foremother of the Beis Yaakov movement. Why does she call it Beit Yaakov? Why does she call it the house of Jacob for a women's institution? It's like this institution has been going on for over 100 years, right? It's changed the Jewish world. We have formal education for Jewish girls now. It wasn't 100 years ago; it was unheard of. Okay, Beit Yaakov. It's because when Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, it said, Ko Tomar lebeit Yaakov v'tagid libnei Yisrael. Ko Tomar is this very gentle, loving way of saying, Ko Tomar, you should say it. It's with kisses. It literally, Hashem is saying, I love you, I love you. Let me tell you something. That's how God wanted to tell the Jewish women. And then it says, v'tagid libnei Israel, and that word tagid is done with a fist. It's done with a patch and with a stick, right? You know that, is there an expression like with a stick? My grandmother used to say with a stick. It's like with toughness, right? Yes, that's how it was given to the men. Okay, Ko Tomar, give it, and you give it to the women first, because if this Jewish thing is actually going to stick, it needs to go through the women. If they're on board with it, we'll be successful with the guys. Okay, so that's how the Torah is given. And here in this very strange episode with two people that want to take down the Jewish people, they're saying how great and how nice, how matovu, how amazing are these tents of Jacob and the dwellings of Israel. what is going on? So I don't know what you want to jump in and share about that.
It's clear to the last that Israel was from the physical material how was religion was very degraded. It's very negative in a very low way. And he said, the North was scared of Canada, but when the nation didn't fly, the African people and still hastened Adlon. Providence switched out of the fragments of the physical spiritual wealth and have influence at the activation of examining itself a worm, devouring itself on its own. And so that the promise prosperity would be fascinating, and it would ultimately become not only onward, but the capability of receiving and blessing. This worm is called ignorance. It is the same spreading different senses. So this was, and this exactly was the motivation of the lab.
So what happens after this? So he's basically sharing with his colleague the secret to the Jewish people and also the secret to our demise. So what happens after this in the Torah is that they introduce these women called the Benot, the daughters of Moab, who were very immoral. And these daughters of Moab come into where the Jewish people are, and they start bringing immorality to the Jewish people. And that's when God says, I can't stay here. This is not a place that I want to dwell in. And that's when we have a downfall. So by them having this code conversation, they're saying, let me tell you where our strength is and where the weakness is, right? And many of the terrible leaders that we've had in the world that have tried to wipe out the Jewish people have tried to find our weakness or our heel, right? That they'll find where that spot. So if you want to know what God's spot is, where he cannot dwell within us, this is where it is. So another thing that I see over here, Matovu Ohalecha, the tents, the original tent that we have ever spoken about is the tent of Abraham and Sarah. It's really the tent of Sarah, right? And Susie actually shared a beautiful idea about the tent. Well, let's ask them. What was known, Sarah and Abraham's tent, what was it known to be? Exactly. So
they were trade hospitality. They welcomed everyone, and if their tent was open, it's a matter. It was also in the desert, traveling. And the way the layout, yes, was right. Also, and that's facing the side of the so they maintain their and their dignity and the nation against
yeah, it's really powerful. And whoever was here on Shabbos, Gadi was sharing a little bit about meeting his rabbi in Israel. And he quoted what his rabbi said, that it's better to be great than to be holy. that his rabbi told us, like, it's better for you guys to do what you're doing here than to live, you know, a pious life in Jerusalem, which was, you know, we could have that also. His encouragement was, it's better to be an Abraham than to be, I don't know, there's more holy people in the Torah than Abraham, but Abraham kept putting himself out there, living amongst the people. He wasn't on a mountaintop, you know, meditating all day. He was out there with difficult life situations and helping people navigate their lives and still bringing Hashem into the difficulty. So I really loved.
Yeah, there's a saying that I learned before is that like somebody is more important than being with somebody. So everything God was in the middle of the conversation with him, and when he started bringing travelers an opportunity, which is what I do. He said, "Excuse me, Dad, even though the time it was there, he could have taken his time whatever, like this, but he didn't. And he was like, and even and he said that. Because was trying everyone coming to be part of the and that is all day. All day, that's all they do. Right? They don't work. Don't go any harm. So that's hard to they're so learned, but they're not.
I'm just hearing you out, but Susie, why don't you share your opinion on that?
She just said great.
Well, it took Gadi and I 12 years of living in that society of only learning till we were able and ready to actually get up and go and make a difference in the world. Now, people could have judged us all those years when we were taking in absorbing all the Judaism and the learning. People could have said, and we actually almost went to take a job at UCLA to be the Rabbi Rebbitzin on campus. When we were newly married with 2 kids, we almost took it, and something inside me said, we're not ready. And we turned it down, and we spent another 7 years in Israel. That's when we really evolved. So I'm happy I didn't listen to all the noise, even my own parents saying, what are you doing? You're, when are you going to, get it together? When are you going to get a degree? When are you going to start your life? Everyone needs to know their strength. And greatness is different for every single person. So I don't know if Susie wants to answer more, but we so desperately need people like that to uphold the spirituality of the world. And I'll tell you guys a personal story, because my family, we were not observant, and my parents became when I was a child, and it was a slow journey until we became very observant the way that we are today. And all my siblings and my parents were the only ones in our entire family that are living an observant lifestyle. And but my mother had a really hard time with it. I mean, they fought it every step of the way. Both my parents, because they wanted their kids to get educated and university and and it was like that was their value system. So when my brother, I mean, he'll appreciate this. Her children are in yeshiva. When my brother went to yeshiva for 1 year, and he deferred from going to medical school, which was my parents' dream, not my brother's dream. Maybe it was my grandparents' dream. Okay, Holocaust survivors. You need my brother is a Kohen. Once he realized that he can't work on cadavers, like medical school being like his value to uphold his spirituality was more important than the other values. And it took a lot of strength. And my mother came to yeshiva in Israel. My mother literally flew there to pack my brother up because he kept going back to yeshiva. Deferred medical school 1 year, deferred medical school another year. And then finally she came, she showed up, and she packed him up. And he said, Mom, at least meet the Rosh Yeshiva. So my mother goes in, however she, I could just imagine. Just imagine. And she said, my son is coming home. He's starting university, and thank you so much for having him here. And he said to her, Mrs. Fleissig, there are so many business people and lawyers and doctors and professionals out there, but there are very few people that have what it takes to uphold the spirituality of the world. Wow. And my mother broke down. She started to cry. My brother is the one that changed our whole family. He was 5 years old when he wanted to. He literally, our whole story, I don't know if you ever heard our story of how we got on this journey. We were living in Calgary, Alberta. There were no Jews there. There was a population of 5,000 Jews in the whole Calgary, Alberta. And my brother kept asking questions and pushing my parents until my parents had no choice but to get answers. They literally said, if we don't give this kid answers, he's going to turn to something else. And it was him that changed our entire family at 5 years old. So the Rosh Yeshiva said, imagine what your son could do at 35 years old. Imagine what he could do at 45 years old. He basically begged my parents to let him stay and to learn. And it was not an easy journey. My brother is a social worker today. He has 8 children. He lives right outside Jerusalem. He's making a huge difference in the Jewish world over there and in the world. He's helping people. He works with geriatrics. He works with teenage kids that are struggling with addictions. He's amazing, but he spent the first 40 years, until he was 40 years old, he did not leave the yeshiva. And do you know how many naysayers were like, he didn't go to the army, and he didn't, he's not contributing. He's a gem there are very few people like my brother that were able to not to quieten down all those voices and just listen to what his greatness is. And I'm super proud of him. So there's different sides. I have experienced it. I have lived it. So come talk to me about this. I believe, and I've shared this before, I believe that there are 2 armies in Israel. There's the IDF, which we would not survive for a day without. And there's the spiritual army. It's the people that are learning and living Torah values, that are upholding their side of things. When we lived in Israel and there were wars going on, we had a sealed room. My kids had gas masks. I had a baby in a gas mask bassinet, my second child, when there was Saddam Hussein was having his chemical warfare war that he wanted to rage. I remember we had a teeny little apartment. And during that time, because the Scuds and the missiles were hitting some cities like Sderot and stuff like that, we opened our teeny apartment to a family of, 5, 6, 7, whatever. We made space. And at that time, and my husband was learning in yeshiva. He wasn't on the front lines. But I remember him coming home saying, the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the institution, said, we need to double down on our hours, on our learning. I basically didn't see him. He was in the base medrash learning more than ever. We were ramping up our prayers. The wars that we fought are miraculous. If we think this is a physical existence, we are a miracle. And there's different sides. So we all need to work together. The Jewish people. Well, Gadi's rabbi is the Rabbi Berkowitz, who goes and helps people go out and make a difference in the world. Now, there's different rabbis that will say, stay in and just do your thing in a quiet way. It's there are different trains of thought. We need all of them to work together. So, but it reminded me of Abraham. Abraham wasn't hiding in the tent. I love this paradigm of Abraham and Sarah as a paradigm that I look up towards as role models for, it's really hard and it's unpopular and you're going against the trends and the grain and you're out there sharing things that might seem crazy to some people. And sometimes, and it's a very lonely experience. Let me tell you that. Let me tell you. It's a very, I mean, I don't know, there aren't too many other observant people that live in my neighborhood. And on Shabbos afternoon, when I'm like walking to shul and, you know, like there's no one even to like walk past and say, good Shabbos, you know, like it could be really lonely to be in this position. And yet it doesn't matter because the vision is so much greater. So that's my role model. This is my paradigm, and it might not work for everybody. My siblings think I'm crazy, basically. So, well, I see myself like more in the Sarah mode, even though, no, whatever. But what it said about Abraham and Sarah is that Abraham taught the men and Sarah taught the women. So yeah, but no, 100%. I mean, that's why I'm saying we could learn so much about ourselves, about our power. By the way, not everyone is meant to be an Abraham and Sarah. You have to honor yourself. That's knowing your greatness. So I want to go into this word, a word that you guys all know. Okay, what is the word Kedusha? Kedusha. So holy. Let's think. What is Kiddush? What is Kiddush? Kiddush. Friday night, we're going to make Kiddush or Kiddush. It's a blessing. What is it? What is it? Sanctification. We raise the wine. We sanctify this moment in time by raising the wine, making a blessing on it. And you know, that's Kiddush, right? So it's holy, sanctification. What else? What? I'm not sure if it has that. Well, I'll tell you what is celebratory. Kiddushin is the Hebrew word for a marriage. That's a celebration, okay? A kiddushin is the marriage ceremony. It's when it's the chuppah. We call it kiddushin, okay? All from the same root. Holy. It's the kiddush. It's the chuppah. It's the right that those ceremonies that we do that are pure holiness. Now the same word, the same root, kadesh, like, you know, kadesh or it's like kiddush on Seder night. You all know that. The same root is the root of another word. The word is kadesha. It's so similar. Kedusha, kadesha. It's literally a vowel difference. And do you know what a kadesha is? What did you say, Paula? Who is that person? Miss Kitty? Miss Kitty. A kadesha is Miss Kitty. Okay, I don't know who Miss Kitty is, but Kadesha is a harlot. Okay, and this is mind-blowing that the same root for holiness is the same thing as immorality or everything opposite. Everything has two sides to it. The same root is the holiest of holies or the most unholy in the same root. It's crazy. So here is my quote that I've been trying to get at, but I'm having a lot of tangents today. Okay, but this is it. This is like the one quote I wanted to start the class with, but now we'll end it with it. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is it. Okay, and this is from the book of Proverbs, okay, written in Mishlei. Chachmat Nashim Banta Beta. The wisdom of women builds her home. I only knew that part of the quote for years. There is a ... to everything. The ... is the olat biadeha tarsena. And the wicked woman with her own hands can destroy it. Let me read that again. The wisdom of a woman can build her home, and her very own hands can destroy it. Okay? This is the power. This is the power of the woman. This was the power of Sarah. And last week I said Sarah this is a deeper mystical idea that she was a rectification of Eve. And Paro was the rectification of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Because at that moment, she could have destroyed everything. She could have become the queen of Egypt and slept with Paro. And by the way, when she's abducted, because like we spoke about, she was abducted twice. She was abducted by the king of Nimrod, no, the king of Avimelech, right? Avimelech. And there were lots of gossipers. There's lots of people that said, oh, they slept together. And then right after that, she gets pregnant. So you could just imagine what was going on. Like, you know, rumor spreads and and then she gives birth to Yitzchak, and God makes a little miracle. He is the splitting image of Abraham. Splitting image, like, phew, right? We didn't have like DNA testing like they do nowadays. But it was a gift because she didn't sleep with Avimelech. He got very sick. He abducted her and he was going to take her and rape her. And he got very sick with impotency. So he couldn't get it together. And then, yeah, and she was saved. But not only was she saved, the future of the Jewish people was saved. I mean, God was clearly on their side. Every single one of these trials, they overcame miracles and miracles and miracles, which is us. We're miracles. We're worthy of miracles. So, okay, so I think yes, questions. Oh, okay. So from that understanding in the Torah that says God gave the Beit Yaakov, the house of Jacob, were referred to, it says, like the commentaries, if you open the Chumash and you go into the commentaries, it says, what does it say? Kotomar lebeit Yaakov, and the commentary says, Beit Yaakov zu hanashim, those are the women. And libnei Israel, the children of Israel, those are the men. So that's where it says. It's Rashi that brings down, I mean, all these incredible commentaries. This is the oral Torah that explain how it's divided. So that's where we get it, and that's why she calls her movement Beit Yaakov, the house of Jacob. Those are the women. We are the house of Jacob. Think about it a little bit more. Beit, house, okay? Originally, we started with Ohel, right? The Ohel, the tent, right? That's what Bilam and Balak, these two wicked people, they're like, let's talk about their tents, right? The original tent, as we said, is Sarah's, okay? From the tent, we have the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert. From the tabernacle, we have the Beis Hamikdash, the holy temple. And once that was destroyed, God says, I will dwell within you, within each one of you. You are a mini sanctuary to me, okay? And we know that means the Jewish woman. The Jewish woman is the home. She gives the structure to the home. She passes on the Judaism. It's literally on her. And you could take it. You could go with it. You could, what's the word? You could build it, or from the same person, your same hands, you could destroy it. That is the power. Scary. Like, it's scary how powerful we are. Can I tell you guys something? I know that everyone has different circumstances, and there's a lot, like 50% of the world is divorced. So this is not against like someone that chose to get divorced. Sometimes divorce is a mitzvah, right? Like, sometimes you need to get yourself out of an unhealthy situation. But my husband's very close, kind of like a mentor, like someone that was like a mother to him for so many years. He met with her in Israel. And she said, how's your marriage? They talk. She said, and he said, whatever, I don't know what he shared. And she's a therapist. So she said something like, and once again, I'm not saying this to hurt anyone that might not be in a good situation. It's hard. Marriage is the hardest thing ever. But she said, she said something like, the fact that Eve stayed with you. She said something like, was the greatest gift you could ever imagine you could give your children. And Gadi and I were talking about it a little bit. We have very little time to talk things through. Like, we're just go. But we sat with that for a minute and realized like there were some ups and downs. There were some really hard times. And there were times that I was ready to throw away the baby with the bathwater, right? And I think everyone probably that's honest with themselves has been in those times when they're, sitting in front of the therapist and they're like, I'm done, right? I don't know if I could do this. But these are the words that says, like, you could build it, you could destroy it. I remember my babi Lola, who passed away right before COVID at 100 years old. She would always tell us stories of like her parents. Like, it was, she had a hard marriage. She got married. It was her second marriage right after the Holocaust. got married, chuppah kedushin, like chuppah, like in a DP camp. She had no one there, no wedding dress, no, like it was such a hard, it was one after another, like chuppahs. Everyone's like choosing a maid and building again. And you know, she didn't have a very good marriage, to be honest. Like they almost like lived in two, they were haunted. They had nightmares every night. They both had previous lives. My grandfather, my Zaidi Usher, had a wife and 2 daughters that were murdered before his eyes. So he became a workaholic. My grandmother became a gambler, right? This is how they lived in 2 different worlds, their coping mechanisms just to survive. And she once told me about her parents. Her parents didn't have a very good marriage either. And they went to the rabbi. It was very, like this is before divorce is so common nowadays, but this is like over 100 years ago. They went to the rabbi to say, we want to get a divorce. Unheard of in those times. And the rabbi sat with them and he said, this is so crazy. He said, a marriage that is, he said, Kadat Moshe Yisrael, which is like a good holy marriage, like you got married, like a rabbi blessed you under the chuppah, is a zivug. It has potential to work. And he basically said, you could get divorced or you can make this work. And that's kind of the power that every woman has, not only in marriage. I mean, some things are out of our control completely. But we do have power. And if I could share one more very vulnerable thing, is that I think I'm gonna close this recording. Okay, I'll leave it on. Just friends, we're all friends. This has never happened to me in my entire life, except for this one time. And I really hope this recording will not be shared anywhere, because this is a very vulnerable thing that I'm going to share. Okay. And a couple of years ago, we're living in Portland and we're working with the community, and, you know, people are coming, our house is open, yes, this and that. We're consulting with people. We never had, I trust my husband, he trusts me. We're so in the right frame of mind that I never thought anything could ever happen that is not okay, right? Like no one would try that with me, and I would never do it with anyone else. And there was a situation, this is really, like, I've never shared this publicly. I only told my sister. There was a situation where a man said, I need your advice. I was very close with his wife, and I thought, okay, maybe I could help him. Like maybe their marriage was on the rocks, and I felt like I had some insight and I could be like the go-between and I could fix their marriage. Okay. And I didn't realize that there was something not okay about what was happening. The whole thing was one day. It was one text message. And then he said, I think I need to meet you one-on-one for coffee. Because I'm like, you know, come over, Gadi and I will sit, we'll have a cup of tea, we'll talk. And all of a sudden, it went from what I thought was totally normal, and, you know, we do this all the time, to something felt a teeny bit off. And I remember like sitting in that moment, and he was like, you know, nice looking. I'm like, you know, and literally I could have said, sure, I'll meet you for coffee. Because I'm still like, I'm okay. But the Torah actually tells us that's not okay. And the Torah puts up fences. Like we have fences and fences. We don't have yichud. We don't have seclusion with another man. Like this is something that I've learned and I've taken on, and I appreciate that it's only there for my protection. So within that day, I wrapped my head around, something is happening that's not okay. And I told him, I'm not going to meet you for coffee, and this is not appropriate. As he was saying, there were like certain things that were like very not appropriate, just in a few messages. And I was like so in denial about it. And I remember calling my sister that night. It was like, I basically put out the fire, but it could have turned into a raging forest fire in a second. And I remember calling my sister, and this is what I told her. And the reason I'm telling you, because I want you guys, and I want every woman to understand how powerful we are. That I told my sister, that's what I felt. I said, I literally was holding the power in my hands to make or break my family. It was so powerful. And the realization, like it literally shook me to my core, what my decision would be. Everything has ramifications, and we all make mistakes. We're just human. And that power, that holding that power and knowing what we hold, what we have, how powerful we are, scary. We could make it, we could build, or we could break it. We could break worlds. We could destroy it with our own hands, with good intentions. So we have to be careful. So I'm going to end here. I hope I didn't overshare. Don't tell my husband. I did tell him, by the way, this is years ago, and he didn't understand. He didn't think it was a big deal. But that's the thing. I knew it was a big deal because women are more intuitive. I knew that there was something behind the words. This is what our sages tell us, that women read, it's not only the face value. We see what's happening around it. I had such clarity that this man was trying to have emotional relationship with me, right? When I shared it with Gadi, and I said, God, I think we need to distance a little bit from this family, and I shared with him, honestly, he didn't accept it or didn't see it the way that I knew it was. And that was okay. That was okay. But I'm just saying, like, we know the power that we have. And that could be really scary. Yeah. We have good people like Sarah. We have some good people to lean on and to see, and all of them. Next week, we're going to go into the next one. And I'm sorry that we didn't get through all the stories, but I think we definitely did a good deep dive into Sarah and Abraham and the challenges and the qualities. Did you write any new ones down? I love it. Okay, so we have a lot. Thank you so much. Oh, okay, wait. Okay. Oh. Yes. Let's do it. Guys. We're singing happy birthday.